Good evening and welcome to Artists Alive. I'm Les Crook, your host, and Artists Alive is the award-winning show brought to you by the Yuba Sutter Regional Arts Council and Continental Cablevision Channel 5. Tonight we're in the beautiful mountains up in Clipper Mills, and behind me is Philip Shortino. Philip's work is primarily in bronze and marble, and we're in his shop here, and he's going to be demonstrating to us work in progress. We're going to have an opportunity to see the works as they begin and also some of the finished products. Good evening, Philip. Look at the camera, please. Could you tell us what you... That's a fairly loud tool you're using there. Could you tell us what you're working on here?
I call this sculpture the Morona sculpture, or the Cadozzi sculpture, actually. And this is a sculpture that Barry Grimala of the Akron Art Gallery in Sacramento, showing my work there. A client of his came in and saw a work that I had for sale. And he didn't have the opportunity to buy it at the time, and so he asked me to make something similar to it. So I discussed it with Mr. Cadozzi, and he gave me specifications for how he'd like it to be, and the overall length and the concept to be very romantic sculpture. And so that's what I'm doing.
Do a lot of your clients come to you with their own personal ideas on what they'd like to see in sculpture, or do they rely on you to come up with the ideas for them?
Well, that's a good question. Really, most recently, my clients have had their own ideas. And I find that very interesting. I like the challenge of being able to take a raw concept as it would be, not being my own, and shape it and bend it and form it to my own ideas. Kind of like, it's more of a challenge, kind of like building a house on the side of a hill. It ends up with some special interest because of the challenge that it represents. So this, I think that I'm probably known for my romantic sculptures, so it's definitely my forte. But Mr. Cadozzi wanted hair hanging. And when I designed this sculpture, the last thing that I had done on it after I had made the bodies is I put the hair, and I had to deliver this thing, and I had a meeting with him that afternoon in Sacramento. And I went remarkably fast. In fact, if the viewers take a look at this, it's all a very rough sketch, but they'll see that this hair is even rougher than the rest of it, because I made it and designed it in half an hour. And the design was so spontaneous to me that I thought it worked out very well, and I'm extremely happy with it, but it did not incorporate the hair draping down and hanging down as the other sculpture that he'd fallen in love with. So I'm finding it real difficult to conform to his idea and let that hair drop down, but I suppose I'll have to do that since I promised.
Now, with this particular piece, did you start out with a drawing of any kind, or did you go right to the wax? Or?
I knew it. I had a very good idea of what I wanted it to look like, so I knew that I wanted the work that he saw was a very refined sculpture, highly rendered, but the concept was extremely primitive. In fact, I based the work on some stuff that was done 30,000 years ago, so some Venuses, some objects of fertility, and it was very primitive. And that I did it many years ago. But the direction of my work now is probably about maybe 70% realistic, 30% abstract. So I think that's probably where this sculpture is.
Now, is this marble? Is this any special type of a marble that you're using here?
It is. This is a little different. This marble is not a pure white marble. A marble is calcium carbonate, and its natural form is pure white. This marble is somewhat gray, and because of that mineral intrusion, which turns white gray in this case, or some marbles green or red or all those beautiful patterns they make, it makes it marble harder. It tempers it. So this is a real hard marble, very brittle. It's got quite a ping to it. I don't know if this will make a sound on it.
Sure does.
This is a piece of marble here. it absorbs the oscillations so much. This crystal structure is not so dense, so the oscillations in here are soaked up and absorbed. But this one, very hard, very brittle.
Where do you get your marble?
I get it anywhere I can. I've just recently bought about more than 3 tons of marble. And essentially I acquired that marble in San Francisco at a monument company. You probably noticed them as you were coming in. They're ex-monuments. Some of them were damaged somehow. I don't know how they were damaged. Perhaps they were vandalized. But here's a case where something that was no good has had an opportunity to become good. So I was able to acquire some very fine marble at a good cost, whereas certain other marble is very expensive. This piece here, to give you an idea, it was a perfect rectangle, cost me a couple $100.
Okay, I was recently watching a program where they're doing a study right now on air pollution and its effects, and what they're studying is marble headstones.
Oh yes.
And how the pollution will, start making them decompose.
Oh, yeah.
What's the life expectancy, or do you have one?
Well, if it's protected, it's indefinite. But this disintegration of monuments is very unfortunate, and it's just awful. But it's worked well in a limited way for me, because marble monuments are completely undesirable. So I'm able to acquire marble that was either once intended for monuments or has suffered somehow as a monument and was replaced by a superior monument, not a superior stone, granite, which is truly a rock of ages.
Right.
So this Knoll Monument Company, incidentally, in Sutter, have been really good to me. So speaking of monuments and where to buy a good monument, if you should have that need, I definitely recommend Ralph at Knoll Monuments. He's been a great friend to me.
Sure, Ralph will appreciate that too. How long has it taken you to get to this point right here when
I'd say
actually
this is about 40 hours.
About 40 hours?
Mm-hmm. That's about, and I think that the initial stages where I'm seeking out these forms, you see, this is, again, very rough sketch, but this sculpture is in proportion. With a marble sculpture, it's a constant process of reduction, and one takes off layers. Generally, one takes off layers. So I'll get an initial shape first, a general contour. This was a rectangle originally, so I took out the great majority of it right away, of the rectangle. And then I had a rough concept here, just a very rough concept, as if it were dipped in, like a candle is made, dipped in wax 50 times, it would suddenly become very obscure. And then once it becomes closer, little by little, I begin to articulate these shapes out of here. Right now I've got the first profile, I've got it in relief on one side, and now I'm starting to move in deep here, and I've got a long way to go. I'll have to take off this back part of her, and I'll be moving in. So really, this will not exist any longer. It's almost a practice stage. She is really well in here. He is considerably further in here. But the sooner I capture that image, the sooner I'm able to bring it into the proper focus.
Okay, moving over here. I see you got a huge piece of marble here.
This piece weighs 600 pounds.
600 pounds?
It's not one of those goodbye pieces of marble that I've been able to acquire at the monument company that I was mentioning earlier. I spent a lot of money for this marble. It's a prime piece, and it was brought to this country in recent times, so it's not been around in the United States for a long time. It's the very finest marble in the world. The Italians call it Bianco P, absolutely pure white. And this is the sculpture that I'm going to be making. I call it involved. In the case where I'm commissioned to make a sculpture, I call the sculpture after the name of the people who commissioned me. In this case over here that we just discussed, it's the Guidozzi sculpture. Since this is something from my own imagination, something that I'm doing, then I give it my own personal name, as I say, involved. And if it's not readily apparent, male torso, I hope with good anatomy. And female torso, I also with realistic anatomy. I think that these are anatomically correct. And this represents really the direction that I'm going with my sculpture right now, with crisp realism and some abstract shapes and forms, top and bottom. Moving through the southern United States desert, I saw these little dust storms blowing around, spinning around in a circle, and that fascinated me, and I want to do more because I'm really interested in making a static medium like marble move. So that's why these little whipping shapes. So they're kind of like in a vortex or a little tornado. I guess what I had in mind is, the human drama, male and female, back to back, and perhaps they were together somewhere, and suddenly some tumultuous event swept them up and started twisting them almost to an impossible degree. And the cloth, maybe it's a blanket or that they might have been laying on, has snapped them at the bottom and conveniently snapped them at the top, covering up the anatomy that I didn't want to show.
Now, where will these be on display?
Well, this is the sculpture that I'll be making at the California State Fair.
Will you be working on it at the fair itself?
They want me working hard, so I'll be spending at least 45 minutes out of every hour rendering this block. And before I get it there, I'll have it not quite to the stage of the previous sculpture that we looked at, but highly developed, because a marble sculpture takes a long time. I'll be at the State Fair at least 9 days, perhaps longer, and I won't be able to make some dramatic progress at that time. So I want to have it be readily apparent when I get there, so the viewers will be able to be able to understand it a little bit more. I'll also be offering this at that time in bronze at the State Fair. So this, as you see here, will be in bronze, patinaed, probably patinaed brown. Patina is a chemical process that they put onto bronze, and it's very artistic, very beautiful. Sometimes the bronzes are polished. I do that too. But these will be offered at the State Fair, and I hope to sell a lot of them there.
So any of our viewers that like to join you at the State Fair, they could actually watch you create on this particular piece right here.
Oh, I can't wait to have somebody come up and say, I saw you in Yuba City Television.
On Channel 5.
Yes, I'll be delighted. I'll pay them a special greeting.
All right. And what's this next piece we have over here?
This is something that I started a long time ago, and I made a sculpture for a gentleman. And he asked me to design a concept for him. This is I like to think of myself as an artist who works in 360 degrees in art. All I care about is beauty, shape and form and harmony. I'm happy to be at the vanguard of art. I hope I'm not flattering myself, but making very abstract shapes. And I'm just as interested and just as content to sit down and make a cowboy or a miner in the most classical and traditional way. I've been criticized for that, but that's me, and I enjoy it. I make a complete commitment to any concept I'm doing. This is what I call a fleeting male form. And if is this the camera that we're looking at now?
Mm-hmm.
Well, then this is a male shape, and he's got some powerful legs here. It's like a logo to help people who aren't terribly steeped in art. Everybody understands what a logo of a company is. So this is kind of like a logo, and it's kind of like a male form just moving. And this is his cloth flowing out in the back, and this is the male anatomy bolting in the front. That's what I'm going to make here.
Have you had an opportunity to do many logos for some of the businesses that are moving into Northern California?
I haven't made any logo. Well, as a matter of fact, now that you mentioned, I did make the logo for the Appeal Democrat, the Freedom Torch, and I have had an interest in a person in Chico that they would like me to do something for their very sophisticated classic car collection, and I really have to get to that before that gets too old. Here are some of these concepts that I've made that are all very similar to that one. This is the male form, and here is the corresponding female form. Again, very abstract. She's more full. Her lines are softer. Males are hard and angular, and females are soft and more contoured. So there you see her legs, like this, and the cloth is sweeping back, and she's just moving out also. Let's set this here. Here's a torso that sits like this. It's a female torso, just lays straight down. It's a very simple, clean shape. Really what I was looking for with these designs were interesting and shapely forms that were not very complicated, so that it wouldn't take me too long to make. Here's one that here's where they all came from originally. I made this much larger. Oh, this was about 300 pounds. Again, I call this a twirling feminine form. It's very old. I did this long ago. And here's a torso. And out of all of these, when I quizzed my family with what they liked the best, my two daughters, my two teenage daughters, and my son, they liked this one the best. It's a female torso. It's not very original. You can look through many art books and see shapes that are very reminiscent to this, but it has my own unique style. But yet there is a lot of precedent for a shape and form like this, where there is not much precedent in art for this. This, I think, is more original, but I'm not always looking for originality. I'm looking for something that I like a lot.
I noticed right behind your box there that you have a piece of bronze that you're currently working on.
This piece?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm not really working on it now. I made this a long time ago, very long ago. And I turned it into bronze, and probably somebody will come to my studio. In fact, it nearly happened a couple of times. And express an interest in this, or I'll have, no doubt, what will happen is I'll have an impending show somewhere, and I'll be desperate to come up with some art objects. And so I'll quickly go into come in here and try to yield as many quick art objects as I can. And since this one is well along, my daughters are becoming so proficient, particularly my daughter Freya is becoming so good at finishing bronzes. She's 14, but I could probably turn this over to her in the near future, and she might finish it for me.
I can just see the sparkle coming off of the rock that's actually located inside this marble here.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. What you're seeing is the crystal structure of marble. Marble is first sedimentary. It's a coral reef, and doesn't it look kind of like coral, like some of the coral we've seen?
It really does.
And as it evolves from coral and gets buried into the earth, becomes under pressure, it little by little compresses, and first it's limestone. And then limestone gets under more intense pressure and crystallizes and becomes marble. And if it hasn't had any mineral intrusion, it has been left alone. And if also, as it was in the state of coral, if it had been tumbled and beat up enough in the ocean, ebbing and flowing, the crystals will become pulverized, like sand does in a creek. And that's what makes itty-bitty tiny crystals opposed from much larger crystals that we might observe in marble, which is not so suitable for sculpture. Little bitty tiny crystals are what's ideal for sculpture. So this stuff has been tumbled and practically emulsified, so when it got compacted, they were little bitty tiny crystals. It makes it perfect. This is probably as nice a stone as I have ever had. So that's a good quality white marble. But sometimes, just because it's white doesn't make it nicer. Sometimes a stone that has a lot of gray veining in it, or some other pattern in it, makes it more unique and more interesting. Like this stone over here. This is also a pure white stone. Sculptors typically seek pure white stones. I suppose it's some kind of compulsion, but it does simplify matters because one doesn't run into problems of different hardnesses with other mineral intrusion. So this is a very large block here. This weighs a ton, and it has a lot of mineral intrusion in it, but I think it's beautiful. This is typical Italian marble. If they call it Carrara marble. And it would not do to make something realistic out of this. You get a male or a female face, and one has all this gray veining running through it. I've seen it done many, many times, and it's okay, but I think it'd be more desirable to have a pure white piece for a realistic work. So I'll probably make something modern, something abstract. Here's a little wax design that I made, and it's a diving girl. Her hair is falling down. She's upside down, and she's grabbing a shell. These are sketches. This is the concept that I was looking for an ocean theme. So I wanted figures in it, and I've done concepts like this before. So I put her upside down, snatching this shell. So I'll clean this up, give her good anatomy, and I might put a bathing suit on her. I don't know.
Philip, can we go outside now
Yes.
and take a look at some of the different pieces that you have set up for us?
Yes.
Well, Philip, I understand that this piece that we've got right here in front of us is something that you were commissioned by one of our local Yuba City residents.
Oh yes. This is one of the attempts that I made to please Mrs. Morona. She wanted a representation of her very famous and talented husband, probably one of the funniest people in the United States. And when I showed it to her, I think that she liked it very much, but she said, I thought it was going to be a vertical. And I said, well, I'd be happy to make a vertical piano for you, but so I went back to my studio and I made a piano that wrapped around Mr. Morona. Perhaps some of the viewers saw that in the Appeal Democrat not long ago. But I plan to offer this in limited edition, and the concept here was this pianist in the height of a performance, just literally attacking the piano. And this is the idea of all this material around here, and that's what it is, in my mind, was perhaps the cover of the piano, just to give it some rhyme and reason. Just literally blew off in a crescendo, and zoomed around and wrapped around his back and enveloped him. So the authentic Morona sculpture is a vertical, and I don't have a model here to show you, but I'm going to refine the piece that I did for her in wax and have that in bronze also. Here's another sculpture that I made for the sculpture that we opened the program with, the Guidozi sculpture. And there's a lot of things I like about this. It certainly had the hair falling down, as Mr. Guidozi so strongly specified. And perhaps he would have liked this as much or more. But as I worked on it, I kind of got into a dead end. Wax is an enormously absorbing process for me, modeling, and I work so intensely I can work 12 hours hardly without a break. And I'll sometimes get blind and I can't see anymore, and I'll just find myself at a flat dead end and can't solve the simplest of problems until I put it away for a good long time. But I like this piece, and I'm going to offer that in limited edition also. This is a nearly finished marble sculpture. I call it Metropolis. This was commissioned by Ray Stone Incorporated, a developer in Sacramento. They saw some of my work also in the Accurate Art Gallery, and said that they would like to develop a concept for their brochure of creating something from nothing. So they commissioned me to make this sculpture, and all they wanted was a series of photographs from a raw block to a finished product. And then they allude in their brochure of how they go from something to nothing. And probably this sculpture is sold, but I'm really not very excited about selling it because I made a price on it before I ever had it finished, and I really don't want to sell it for that price, but I think I'm going to be committed to doing so. But I'm going to make more of these, and I've got a whole lot of ideas for doing cityscapes. Some will have nebula in them, some will have rising suns with rays coming through. And
can you do a city with the buttes in the background?
I'd love to. In fact, I want to do some mountainscapes. It sounds like we rehearsed this, but I definitely want to do some mountainscapes, as this is a cityscape, just a pure mountainscape. And I can't wait to do it. In the very near future, I'm going to do that because it's a simple and easy thing to do. I could do one relatively fast, and I think it'd be a lot of fun. Here we have a piece here that a gentleman commissioned me to do, And I like it a lot, and I think it's kind of funny. I don't mind. I don't mind describing how this sculpture came to be, because I have a few people in my life that I idolize, and one of them is Michelangelo, of all people, right? We've all heard of good old Mike, and the person who asked me to do this said they wanted a cowboy carrying a gun. This guy has arms. They're not with him today, but they're eminent, and this has a saddle. So I'll combine this for a finished product as a complete entity, offer it in bronze also.
Okay.
Here we have, speaking of bronzes, a nearly finished and perfected bronze. I've made this in marble. This is one of my favorite sculptures. It's such a tight little entity. It's such a unified whole. I think if I had to make a hasty retreat, which might be imminent any time in the life I live, probably the sculpture that I'd pick up and run off with would be this one. I love this sculpture. I think it provides for me the entity concept that I think I'm preoccupied by. And I want to show you some things back in the studio that I'm working on now, having to do with bronze. This is a bronze sculpture as I receive it back from the foundry. Very crude, little pits here that they TIG welded closed, because there's always some imperfections, especially the foundries I deal with. I'm always hoping to gain a rapport with a foundry that I like better. Just yesterday I talked to one that I think has a chance. So this is a crude casting as it comes back from the foundry. This particular sculpture has been cleaned up. It's almost ready to polish. My daughter Cassandra has cleaned this one, incidentally. She's done a great job. This is some of the most difficult work to do. Some of the greatest patience that is required is in chasing one of these bronzes. Here's a bronze that my daughter Freya has prepared for me, and she has brought it to this point, and now I'm polishing it, and I want to give you a little demonstration of just how that's done. This is just an ordinary grinder with a polishing wheel, and if the wheel doesn't come off. This is a rouge that's typically used by bronze polishers, by jewelers, and it's just an abrasive. It has just a small amount of abrasive bound up, and I think tallow.
Okay, again, I'm Les Crook, your host for Artists Alive. Thank you for joining us.